In a town too small to find on most maps, where the wind often forgot to blow, and the church bell rang only for births and funerals, there lived a goat named Sebastian. Not the kind of goat one would expect to make headlines or history know. Sebastian was ordinary in form, scruffy and fleece, with eyes the color of antique brass and a left horn that curled slightly the wrong way. But there was something in his gaita, peculiar confidence, theatrical pause before chewing into look, that unsettling knowing stare, which made people stop mid-sentence. He was born in the shadow of a collapsing shed behind the butcher's shop. Raised among chickens with identity issues and ducks that quacked in French. His owner, old Miss Winifred, had named him after her ex-husband, mostly out of spite, and let him wander the village with all the freedom of a stray cat, and so Sebastian learned. He learned the rhythm of market days when the fishmonger dropped scraps near the alley. He learned who left their garden gates open, who snuck out at night to meet lovers or debts, and which children feared which noises in the dark. But most importantly, Sebastian watched the mayor, a tall, stiff man with shoes too polished and a voice like uncooked pasta snapping in the cold. He smiled like a stamp flat, official dead behind the ink. The people grew weary of him. His promises echoed and vanished like smoke through a sieve. The town shrank. The laughter dimmed. And one morning, after a particularly disappointing speech involving pothole budgets and goose ordinances, Sebastian wandered onto the town hall steps. No one stopped him. In fact, they moved aside. He stood before the mic, sniffed it once, and sneezed. The crowd roared. Someone clapped. A child shouted, "He's better than the mayor." And that's when the whisper began. What if we voted for the goat? At first, it was a joke small-town satire, the kind that blooms in dusty and overwarm beer. Buttons were made. Sebastian for mayor. Posters, too, poorly printed but charming in their absurdity. The old librarian sketched him in charcoal, regal atop a stack of overdue books. And somehow, the idea grew legs. It's not just goat legs, human ones. Because deep down, the villagers weren't laughing at the goats. They were laughing at everything the goat wasn't. Sebastian didn't make empty speeches. He didn't raise taxes on wheelbarrow vendors or ban music after sunset. He didn't lie, didn't talk. That in a town drowning in bureaucratic babble was his greatest asset. The mayor, furious, called it a disgrace. Democracy is not a petting zoo. He thundered from the podium. But no one listened. Because just as he spoke, Sebastian trotted through the back door of town hall, climbed onto the stage with the grace of a ballerina with hooves, and promptly ate the mayor's printed speech. The video went viral. Local news, then national. Headlines like "Billy Goat challenges bureaucracy," and "Is this goat the leader we deserve?" flooded the internet. People came from neighboring towns to see Sebastian. They brought gifts, scarves, tea, poems. Children wrote essays. Elders nodded in approval. And when election day came, with a ballot box made of cardboard and hope, Sebastian won. Not by a small margin. He won by a landslide. The previous mayor resigned in dramatic fashion, muttering about the fall of civilization. And so began the reign of Mayor Sebastian the Goat. Of course, Sebastian could not sign documents or attend cabinet meetings in the traditional sense. But he inspired a wave of change simply by existing. The council meetings became shorter. People listened more. Shouting turned into silent contemplation, as though the goat's presence demanded dignity. A translator was hired not for language, but for mood. Miss Winifred, his owner, and now official goat liaison, would interpret his bleats and tail twitches with uncanny accuracy. When he stomped his hoof 3 times, a noise complaint was investigated. When he refused to eat lettuce from a certain farmer's hand, the zoning plans were reevaluated. Perhaps it was theater, perhaps it was coincidence. But the town began to thrive. Markets boomed. Music returned. Young people stopped leaving. The postman smiled again. And amid all this, Sebastian stood quietly at the edge of things, watching, chewing, ruling. Yet no story so curious can escape the claws of fate. One winter morning, with frost whispering across rooftops, Sebastian failed to rise from his bedding. Miss Winifred found him still, eyes open, as if reading some final report from the sky. The town mourned. Bells rang not just once, but 12 times. A statue was commissioned, goat mid-chew, forever watching. They held elections again. People voted. Humans this time. But each new mayor wore a pin in the shape of a small, crooked horn. And if you visit that town today, you'll still hear the stories. The goat who ruled without words, who mended a broken village by simply being better than the men who spoke too much. And every child raised in that place knows. You don't need to speak to lead. Sometimes, all it takes is a stare that says, "I've been watching. And I know."